Compulsory Heterosexuality and Lesbian Continuum is an essay written by Adrienne Rich, a renowned feminist thinker and poet. Published in 1980, the essay explores the concept of compulsory heterosexuality, which refers to the societal pressure and expectation for individuals to be heterosexual. Rich argues that this pressure is a form of oppression that marginalizes and erases the experiences of lesbians. Rich also introduces the concept of the lesbian continuum, which challenges the idea that sexuality is strictly defined as either heterosexual or homosexual. She suggests that there is a range of intimate relationships between women that fall within the continuum, whether or not they involve sexual activity. Rich argues that recognizing and valuing these relationships is essential for challenging compulsory heterosexuality and creating a more inclusive society. Overall, Rich's essay has been influential in feminist and queer theory, contributing to discussions about sexuality, gender, and power dynamics in society. Compulsory Heterosexuality and Lesbian Continuum, by Adrienne Rich, is an essay that critiques societal norms regarding sexuality, particularly the expectation that individuals should be heterosexual. Rich argues that this expectation is a form of oppression, as it marginalizes and erases the experiences of lesbians. She introduces the concept of the lesbian continuum, which encompasses a range of intimate relationships between women, whether or not they involve sexual activity. Rich suggests that recognizing and valuing these relationships is crucial for challenging compulsory heterosexuality and creating a more inclusive society. The essay has been influential in feminist and queer theory, contributing to discussions about sexuality, gender, and power dynamics. In Compulsory Heterosexuality and Lesbian Continuum, Adrienne Rich presents several key arguments to support her critique of compulsory heterosexuality and the promotion of a lesbian continuum. Here are some of the main arguments along with examples. Compulsory heterosexuality as social norm. Rich argues that society imposes heterosexuality as the norm, leading individuals to believe that heterosexual relationships are the only valid form of intimacy. This pressure can be seen in societal expectations, media representation, and legal frameworks. For example, laws and policies that prioritize heterosexual marriages and families over other forms of relationships. Marginalization of lesbian experience. Rich highlights how compulsory heterosexuality marginalizes and erases the experiences of lesbians. Lesbians may feel pressured to conform to heterosexual norms, leading to a sense of invisibility and alienation. An example of this marginalization is the lack of representation of lesbian relationships in mainstream media compared to heterosexual relationships. The lesbian continuum. Rich introduces the concept of the lesbian continuum to challenge the binary view of sexuality, heterosexual versus homosexual. She argues that there is a spectrum of intimate relationships between women, which may or may not involve sexual activity. This continuum includes friendships, mentorships, and other forms of emotional and physical closeness. An example of the lesbian continuum is a deep emotional bond between two women that is not necessarily sexual but is still significant and meaningful. Valuing female relationships. Rich emphasizes the importance of valuing and celebrating all forms of female relationships, whether they fit into traditional heterosexual norms or not. By recognizing the diversity of female experiences and relationships, society can move away from the idea of compulsory heterosexuality. An example of valuing female relationships is promoting friendship and emotional support between women as equally important as romantic or sexual relationships. Overall, Rich's arguments in Compulsory Heterosexuality and Lesbian Continuum aim to challenge societal norms and promote inclusivity and acceptance of diverse forms of sexuality and relationships. Here are some additional points and examples from Adrienne Rich's essay, Compulsory Heterosexuality and Lesbian Continuum. Critique of male-centered society. Rich critiques the patriarchal nature of society, arguing that compulsory heterosexuality serves to maintain male dominance and control over women. Heterosexuality is often promoted as a means of fulfilling men's needs and desires, while women's experiences and desires are marginalized. For example, societal expectations that women should prioritize their relationships with men over other aspects of their lives. Normalization of lesbian experiences. Rich advocates for the normalization of lesbian experiences in relationships, challenging the idea that they are abnormal or deviant. By recognizing and valuing lesbian experiences, society can create a more inclusive and accepting environment for all sexualities. An example of this normalization is the portrayal of lesbian relationships in literature, art, and media as natural and valid forms of love and intimacy. Intersectionality. Rich acknowledges the intersectionality of identity, recognizing that experiences of compulsory heterosexuality and the lesbian continuum are shaped by factors such as race, class, and ability. For example, women of color may face additional pressures and stereotypes regarding their sexuality, impacting their experiences of compulsory heterosexuality. Personal and political liberation. Rich argues that embracing the lesbian continuum is not just a personal choice but also a political act of resistance against heterosexist norms. By challenging these norms and embracing diverse forms of relationships, individuals can contribute to broader social change. An example of personal and political liberation is a woman openly embracing her lesbian identity and advocating for LGBTQ+ rights, challenging societal norms and promoting acceptance. These points and examples illustrate Rich's broader argument about the importance of challenging compulsory heterosexuality and embracing the diversity of human sexuality and relationships. Compulsory Heterosexuality and Lesbian Continuum, by Adrienne Rich explores several themes related to sexuality, gender, and power dynamics. Here are some of the key themes along with examples from the essay. Heteronormativity. Rich critiques the societal norm of heterosexuality as the default and expected sexual orientation. She argues that this norm is enforced through various means, including cultural representations, laws, and social expectations. For example, the legal recognition of only heterosexual marriages in many societies reinforces the idea that heterosexuality is the norm. Marginalization and erasure. Rich highlights how compulsory heterosexuality marginalizes and erases the experiences of lesbians. This erasure can be seen in the lack of representation of lesbian relationships in mainstream media and the historical dismissal of lesbian experiences as abnormal or deviant. For example, lesbian relationships may be portrayed as less valid or significant compared to heterosexual relationships in literature and film. Sexual identity and self-definition. Rich explores the complexity of sexual identity and the importance of self-definition. She argues that individuals should be free to define their own sexual identities and relationships, rather than conforming to societal expectations. For example, a woman may identify as lesbian even if her relationships do not fit into traditional notions of what constitutes a lesbian relationship. The lesbian continuum. Rich introduces the concept of the lesbian continuum, which encompasses a range of intimate relationships between women. This continuum includes both sexual and non-sexual relationships, emphasizing the importance of all forms of female intimacy. For example, close friendships between women can be seen as part of the lesbian continuum, even if they do not involve sexual activity. Intersectionality. Rich acknowledges the intersectionality of identity, recognizing that experiences of compulsory heterosexuality and the lesbian continuum are shaped by factors such as race, class, and ability. For example, a woman's experience of compulsory heterosexuality may be influenced by her racial or economic background, impacting how she navigates her sexual identity. These themes and examples illustrate Rich's broader arguments about the need to challenge heteronormative assumptions and embrace the diversity of human sexuality and relationships. Compulsory Heterosexuality and Lesbian Continuum, by Adrienne Rich is a significant and influential essay in feminist and queer theory. Its relevance extends beyond its initial publication in 1980, as it continues to inform discussions on sexuality, gender, and power dynamics. Here are some key aspects of its significance, relevance, legacy, contribution, and impact. Critique of heteronormativity. Rich's essay offers a foundational critique of heteronormativity, the assumption that heterosexuality is the norm and other sexualities are deviations. This critique remains relevant in challenging societal norms and advocating for LGBTQ+ rights. Visibility and representation. Rich's emphasis on the importance of visibility and representation for lesbians and other marginalized groups has contributed to ongoing efforts to create more inclusive media and cultural representations. Concept of the lesbian continuum. Rich's introduction of the concept of the lesbian continuum has been influential in expanding the understanding of female relationships beyond traditional categories. This concept has contributed to discussions on friendship, intimacy, and community among women. Intersectionality. Rich's acknowledgement of the intersectionality of identity has helped to highlight the ways in which experiences of sexuality, gender, and power are shaped by factors such as race, class, and ability. This intersectional approach has been instrumental in promoting a more nuanced understanding of social issues. Legacy and influence. Compulsory Heterosexuality and Lesbian Continuum has had a lasting legacy and continues to influence contemporary feminist and queer scholarship. It has inspired further research and activism in the fields of gender and sexuality studies. Contribution to feminist thought. Rich's essay is a significant contribution to feminist thought, as it challenges traditional notions of femininity and womanhood. It encourages women to define their own identities and relationships on their own terms. Impact on LGBTQ+ rights. Rich's work has had a broader impact on LGBTQ+ rights by advocating for the recognition and acceptance of diverse sexualities and relationships. It has contributed to the ongoing movement for equality and social change. Overall, Compulsory Heterosexuality and Lesbian Continuum continues to be a relevant and impactful work that has helped shape contemporary discussions on sexuality, gender, and power. Compulsory Heterosexuality and Lesbian Continuum by Adrienne Rich has received both praise and criticism since its publication. Here's a critical examination of some common comments about the essay. Praise for challenging heteronormativity. Many scholars and activists applaud Rich for challenging the societal norm of heteronormativity and for advocating for the acceptance and recognition of diverse sexualities. Rich's critique has been instrumental in fostering a more inclusive understanding of sexuality and relationships. Criticism of essentialism. Some critics argue that Rich's essay leans towards essentialism by suggesting that all women share a common lesbian experience or potential for lesbianism. This perspective overlooks the diversity of women's experiences and sexual identities. Limited intersectionality. While Rich acknowledges the intersectionality of identity to some extent, critics argue that her analysis could be more nuanced. They suggest that she does not fully explore how factors such as race, class, and ability intersect with sexuality to shape experiences of compulsory heterosexuality. Relevance to transgender and non-binary experiences. Critics note that Rich's focus on lesbian experiences may exclude or marginalize the experiences of transgender and non-binary individuals. The essay's emphasis on female relationships could be seen as excluding those whose gender identity does not align with traditional notions of femininity. Critique of binary thinking. Rich's essay has been praised for challenging binary thinking about sexuality and relationships. However, some critics argue that her focus on the lesbian continuum still relies on a binary understanding of gender and sexuality, male-female, homosexual, heterosexual, and could be more inclusive of non-binary and genderqueer experiences. Impact on feminist and queer theory. While Rich's essay has had a significant impact on feminist and queer theory, some critics argue that its influence has been overstated. They suggest that other theorists and activists have contributed equally or more significantly to the advancement of LGBTQ+ rights and feminist thought. Overall, while Compulsory Heterosexuality and Lesbian Continuum has been praised for its contributions to feminist and queer theory, it has also faced criticism for its limitations and potential shortcomings. Adrienne Rich, the author of Compulsory Heterosexuality and Lesbian Continuum, was a prominent American poet, essayist, and feminist thinker. She was born on May 16, 1929, in Baltimore, Maryland, and passed away on March 27, 2012. Rich's work often explored themes of identity, gender, sexuality, and social justice, making her a central figure in feminist and queer literature. Features of Rich's writing include: feminist perspective. Rich's work is deeply rooted in feminist thought, challenging traditional notions of gender roles and advocating for women's rights and autonomy. Social and political critique. Rich's writing often includes a critique of societal norms and structures, particularly those related to gender, sexuality, and power dynamics. Personal and political intersection. Rich frequently interweaves personal experiences with larger political and social issues, making her work relatable and impactful to readers. Complexity and nuance. Rich's writing is known for its complexity and nuance, exploring the intricacies of human relationships and identities. Poetic language. As a poet, Rich's prose often features poetic language and imagery, adding depth and beauty to her essays and arguments. Intersectionality. While Rich's early work focused primarily on white, middle-class women's experiences, she later acknowledged the importance of intersectionality, recognizing how factors such as race, class, and sexuality intersect to shape individuals' experiences. Legacy and influence. Rich's work has had a lasting impact on feminist and queer literature, inspiring generations of writers and activists to explore themes of gender, sexuality, and social justice. Overall, Adrienne Rich's writing is characterized by its thoughtfulness, depth, and commitment to challenging societal norms and advocating for a more inclusive and just world. Compulsory, Heterosexuality and Lesbian Continuum, by Adrienne Rich is considered a seminal text in feminist and queer theory because it challenges conventional ideas about sexuality, gender, and power dynamics. Here's why the text is considered significant. Critique of heteronormativity. Rich's essay critiques the assumption that heterosexuality is the norm and challenges the societal pressures that enforce this norm. By highlighting the ways in which compulsory heterosexuality marginalizes and erases the experiences of lesbians, Rich calls attention to the need for a more inclusive understanding of sexuality. Concept of the lesbian continuum. Rich introduces the concept of the lesbian continuum, which expands the notion of lesbianism beyond sexual behavior to include a range of intimate relationships between women. This concept challenges binary views of sexuality and emphasizes the importance of all forms of female relationships. Intersectionality. While Rich's essay has been critiqued for its limited exploration of intersectionality, it does acknowledge the intersection of sexuality with other aspects of identity such as race, class, and ability. This recognition laid the groundwork for more nuanced discussions of how multiple identities intersect to shape individuals' experiences. Visibility and representation. Rich emphasizes the importance of visibility and representation for lesbians and other marginalized groups. Her call for greater representation in media and culture has contributed to ongoing efforts to challenge stereotypes and promote diverse representations of sexuality. Personal and political implications. Rich's essay highlights the personal and political implications of sexuality, suggesting that embracing the lesbian continuum is not just a personal choice but also a political act of resistance against heteronormative norms. This perspective has inspired activism and advocacy for LGBTQ+ rights. Legacy and influence. Compulsory Heterosexuality and Lesbian Continuum has had a lasting legacy and continues to influence contemporary feminist and queer scholarship. It has inspired further research and activism in the fields of gender and sexuality studies. Overall, the text is significant because it challenges dominant narratives about sexuality and relationships, advocates for greater inclusivity and acceptance, and lays the groundwork for more complex understandings of identity and power dynamics.